essential owner versus incidental owner. And I believe this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, this will prove if I've been listening to you or not. Consolidators value a shop that can run by itself and the owner isn't involved. Did I get that right?
You said it correct, yes.
Okay, so explain to me the difference between essential owner and incidental owner.
Matt, I'm gonna let you take that one. You did such an awesome job on that one.
That's yeah. So basically, and it's funny because yes, a consolidator does, but I think a third, an insider also values that too. So basically, what the difference is. So an essential owner is basically means that it is essential that you're there for the business to function. If you're not there, the business will start to dive and fail. Okay. An incidental owner is somebody who has developed a business that can function without them. If they decide to go and spend a month in Europe, they could go do that, be disconnected from the shop, come back and find it still functioning and most likely growing. Okay. The other way to, I guess, to phrase it is are you an operator or are you an owner? So, I mean, I had a client who would always complain to me that I never have time to work on the business. And I said, that's your problem. I said, you're not going to get to the point where you want to be as long as you're in the business all the time. I'm a real big proponent of teaching what my coach has taught me, that we have tactical times where we need to work in the business. We've got to be doing the physical stuff in the business, but we also need to be separating out time that we're working on the business. Bigger picture. Where do we want to go? Working on that vision. What do we want our lives to look like? What do we want our families to look like? What do we want to do for our employees? What kind of culture do we want to build? And then we also need our renewal time. And that's time just to get away, just to disconnect, which is we need to recharge. And I think the bigger our businesses get, the more we need to recharge. So that's essentially the difference between the essential owner versus the incidental owner. Now, and I know Laura's going to speak to this about it from the third party aspect, but I want to just talk about it from the insider aspect. And I get a lot of shop owners who come to me and says, "Well, my kids aren't interested in the business, and key employees aren't interested in buying the business. I don't have any other options except selling." And it's actually interesting because then as we start doing the deeper dive and, helping them to develop this deeper vision, all of a sudden I see that no, they're stuck on the hamster wheel. They're working in the business all the time. And I tell them, I said, well, no wonder nobody wants this. Your kids they don't want that kind of lifestyle. I said, but imagine if we could get you to a point where all of a sudden, we've delegated a lot of your responsibilities. We've empowered your employees to be able to take that. You don't have to be there all the time and you can work on high level stuff. Do you think that's something that might appeal to your kids? And all of a sudden it's like, that makes sense. Because the next generation, it's not that don't want to work hard, but they've watched their parents, grind their noses on the grindstone for so long that they have no noses. Okay. And, they've been through a lot of, things like, 2008, terrorist attacks, school shootings, Great Recession of 2008. They've watched all these things and they're like, look, I don't mind working, but I want to have lifestyle too. Okay. And so wouldn't it be cool if you could develop a business that you could build mini retirements into? I mean, that's how I've developed my business. I build mini retirements into it. And I'm planning my retirement plan's face down on my desk because I love what I do. And as long as I'm mentally and physically capable of doing it, I'm going to continue to do it, but I wouldn't be able to do that if I couldn't take those periods where I grind out for 6-8 weeks and then give me 2 weeks, two or 3 weeks to go travel to Europe, to take the kids to Disney or whatever your dream is to do. So that's really, I think, the big difference. As an incidental owner, you have freedom, okay, within your business. And as an essential owner, you don't. You're just a slave. You basically bought yourself a job.
Matt, that was absolutely on point. And I can tell you that, I've been in the collision industry now 34 years. I realize I'm totally telling on myself, but back, even the day when I had my stores, they were in Maryland. And I can think of a gentleman when I was an insurance adjuster before I even owned my stores. He would work like 80 hours a week, and his kids are younger than mine, or younger than me rather, but older than my son. And they don't want anything to do with the business. And he's very much about, being involved, being in the grind. Like he feels like if he's not there, it's like his name, his everything, and his shop is named after him. And I get that, but we have to modernize our way of thinking. And just because you have been this way your whole life and this is the way you run your shop doesn't mean that you have to continue doing that. You can certainly change your whole mentality. It can still be, Laura's body shop or whatever, but it's just going to be where it's going to be driven by your dreams and your goals with other people acting upon those. And I think that's a really key element because I think when I talk to shop owners, a lot of times when I tell them, hey, you can change how you run your business, you don't have to sell. You've got a great business. Is this really something you want to do? And when you get them thinking about it, sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm out, I'm done. But some of them, like, they get excited and they get rejuvenated and they change their mentality and get some coaching and, change entirely how they run their business. And I guess that's what Matt and I are trying to take home to everybody today. Yeah, the consolidator money is great. Yeah, that's awesome. But, if you feel like it's something that you want to try to reinvent or try to figure out a better way, there are better ways. And Matt and I would love to try to help you figure all that out instead of just being forced or feeling like you're being pushed off of a cliff because I've had many, many sellers come to me and say that they feel like the industry's changed so much that they feel like they're just being shoved out of it and shoved off a cliff. And that's a terrible feeling, especially, when there's sellers that one called me the other day was 38 years old. I mean, he's got tons of runway. He's got different things that he wants to go do and things. But still, if you think about it, that's kind of a sad situation that we're in, as an industry.